Welcome to Sissy Fantasy World, where every story sparkles. Don't forget to subscribe for more magic. I never imagined I would end up seated in the front row of an echoing classroom, palms sweating against the glossy surface of a vinyl-wrapped desk. The room was cool, too cool, as if it were waiting to test me. I could feel my pulse hum beneath my collar. The old guidance counselor's words still drifted through my memory. If you truly want to understand your identity, you'll need guidance. This class isn't ordinary, but neither are you. At first I thought she was joking. A class dedicated to crossdressing, transformation. I had imagined awkward sewing tutorials and maybe a few styling tips, not this staged theatrical environment. The fluorescent lights reflected against black and silver panels along the walls, making everything look polished, almost futuristic. At the front stood a tall figure whose presence softened the room and sharpened it at the same time. "Welcome," the instructor said, adjusting a high-collared vinyl coat that shimmered like obsidian. Their voice balanced somewhere between strict and kind. "Here, you'll learn how to express truth through presentation, even when it scares you." My throat tightened. The instructor, who insisted we call them teacher, had a reputation for being transformative, not simply in technique, but in the way they forced students to confront everything they avoided about themselves. I had heard whispers. People entered anxious and left confident, bold, unrecognizable. That was why I came. Teacher studied me closely, not with judgment but with curiosity, like I was a puzzle yet to be assembled. "Your name." I gave it, though my voice nearly vanished. "And you've come here willingly." I nodded. "Good." Their hand lifted and pointed me toward a long mirror mounted against one wall. "Tell me what you see." I hesitated before stepping in front of the mirror. A person stared back, hair too long to be conventionally masculine, but too messy to feel intentional, shoulders hunched from years of trying to seem smaller. I wore jeans and a button-up shirt that never looked right on me. Everything felt like camouflage for a shape I didn't understand. Teacher approached quietly. "You see someone unsure," they said, "but I see potential. Under all that uncertainty is someone yearning to breathe." I swallowed hard. Something in those words struck deeper than I expected, as if teacher had peeked inside the locked room I'd kept hidden for years. "I know you're afraid," they continued, "but fear is only another fabric. We will tailor it." The lesson began with simple questions. What colors made me feel strong? What textures comforted me? I surprised myself by admitting I liked smooth materials, soft gleam, the weightless shimmer of satin. Teacher nodded as if they already knew. "We will start gently," they said. "No pressure, no shame." They opened a narrow wardrobe along the wall. Inside hung garments of vinyl, coats, skirts, trousers, shirts. They weren't flamboyant, not the exaggerated image I once carried of cross-dressing. These were sleek, structured, and elegant. Teacher pulled out a deep plum vinyl jacket. "Try this." I hesitated, heart hammering, but slipped it on. It was cool against my arms, then warmed quickly to my skin. The reflection in the mirror shifted, still me, but clearer somehow. My shoulders straightened. The glossy fabric caught the light, tracing a sharper silhouette than my faded clothes ever allowed. Teacher smiled, a small, encouraging curl. "Better, already you reveal more of yourself." It wasn't that I suddenly knew who I was, I didn't. But something unfamiliar stirred, a quiet confidence. Teacher asked me to walk to the end of the classroom and back. The vinyl whispered with movement, a soft rustling like leaves in wind. By the time I returned, my breath felt deeper. "This class," teacher said, "is not about pleasing others. It's about understanding authenticity. But to grasp that, you must listen, observe, follow instructions so you can later craft your own voice." The phrasing unsettled me, not because it sounded controlling, but because it forced me to admit how little I understood about myself. Maybe obedience wasn't about surrender. Maybe it was about learning structure so expression could flourish. I spent the remaining time practicing posture, adjusting the jacket, experimenting with slight gestures. Teacher corrected me gently, guiding my elbows, encouraging me to take space, to stop folding inward. When the session ended, teacher approached, eyes thoughtful. "You handled today better than most. Return tomorrow with an open mind. More will unfold. I nodded, though beneath the small victory of surviving the first lesson lay a tremor of anticipation. Something inside me had cracked open, not painfully, but undeniably. As I left, I glanced once more at the mirror. The person reflected still felt unfamiliar, yet there was a spark in their eyes, as if they'd finally been acknowledged. The next morning, I arrived earlier than I meant to, clutching my bag like it might anchor me if things spiraled out of control. The hallway leading to the classroom was quiet, the kind of quiet that turns breath into sound. I paused outside the door, heart tapping against my ribs, unsure whether I was more afraid of changing or staying the same. Inside, teacher stood beneath a ring of lights, arranging materials across a long table. The vinyl coat they wore today was a deep emerald shade, subtle but striking, and the color reflected softly against their calm features. They lifted their gaze when I entered. "You returned," they said, as though this, my simple presence, carried weight. "I said I would," I replied, though I wondered if I sounded braver than I felt. Teacher nodded but didn't smile this time. Instead, they motioned for me to stand before the mirror again. I felt the familiar anxiety bloom in my chest. The mirror seemed like a portal into the version of me I hadn't yet accepted. "We begin with reflection," teacher said. "Again, tell me what you see." I inhaled slowly. Yesterday, I'd described uncertainty. Today, something felt different. "I see someone who wants direction," I said. "Someone afraid to disappoint." Teacher's expression softened, as if I'd revealed a hidden truth. Wanting to please does not make you weak, but it must be purposeful, not desperate. You must learn how to please with intention, how to show effort, grace, courage. That is why you are here. They stepped to the wardrobe again, unfurling several pieces of clothing in varying tones: silver, violet, midnight blue. All vinyl, though each fabric had its own subtle texture. "Today, we explore identity through transformation," teacher explained. "Not disguise, discovery." They selected a vinyl tunic in pale blue, structured but delicate. "Try this." Changing into it felt less frightening than yesterday. The smooth material glided over my arms, its faint rustle echoing against the walls. The mirror revealed a silhouette much gentler than before. I looked softer. Not in a diminutive way, but in a way that felt honest. Teacher circled me, studying with quiet focus. "Notice how the fabric guides your posture," they murmured. "You stand taller without realizing it." I did. The tunic's cut seemed to encourage my spine to lengthen, my chin to lift. "Sometimes," they continued, "we obey structure so we can be freed from our own doubt." The lesson grew more complex. Teacher had me walk with precise pauses, turn lightly, practice breathing that matched my stride. It felt strange at first, like performing a role I barely understood, but gradually the motions became natural. I began to move without thinking about how I might look. It felt peaceful. After several cycles of movement, teacher guided me to a small desk. Upon it sat a narrow box. When I opened it, I found a pair of gloves, silver vinyl, short and sleek. "Put them on," teacher said. They were snug, molding to my fingers. I flexed my hands, startled at how different they felt, more deliberate, more poised. "These," teacher said, "represent control, attention, precision. Every gesture matters. To please others, not through subservience but through mindful presence, you must learn to speak with motion." They demonstrated small movements, lifting the hand in greeting, turning the wrist to indicate openness, placing the palm over the heart to show sincerity. I practiced each, watching myself in the mirror, sensing how intention changed everything. Teacher corrected my fingers gently, never forceful. "You rush," they observed. "Slow down, let your gestures breathe." I did, and something shifted. The anxiety that had gripped me since I arrived began to unravel. I could feel each movement become clearer, cleaner. "You're learning," teacher said quietly. That simple acknowledgement sent a warm rush through me. Gratitude, pride, and something I couldn't name. The next exercise tested my instincts. Teacher asked me to step into the center of the room and imagine a stranger entering. a stranger I wanted to impress not through charm, but through sincerity. "How do you greet them?" they asked. I faltered at first, uncertain, but teacher waited patiently. I lifted my gloved hand with the practiced openness, shoulders loose, head tilted slightly forward. "Good," they murmured. "Now speak." My voice emerged soft but steady. "Welcome, I'm glad you're here." Teacher watched me with thoughtful intensity. "You speak to others the way you wish they would speak to you," they said. "That is a strength." I swallowed. I'm still not sure who I'm becoming. "You are not becoming someone else," teacher replied. "You are meeting the person you've always ignored." That landed harder than I expected. I felt suddenly exposed, like my uncertainty was no longer something to hide, but something to hold. We continued practicing until my movements felt fluid, almost instinctive. The vinyl whispered with every breath and step, its sound gradually becoming comforting rather than foreign. When the session ended, teacher handed me a slim booklet. Its black cover bore no title, only a subtle imprint resembling interwoven threads. "For reflection," they said, "write what you felt today, do not analyze, simply notice." Outside the classroom, the hallway suddenly seemed brighter. As I walked, the tunic and gloves stored in my bag felt heavier than their physical weight. They carried something new, possibility. I returned home with an energy I couldn't explain. I set the booklet on my desk, staring at its blank first page. My chest felt full, maybe uncertain, maybe hopeful. So I wrote. Words flowed, messy, emotional, but honest. And when I finished, I felt lighter. The following day came quicker than I expected, and though I told myself I was ready, nerves fluttered under my ribs the moment I stepped outside. My reflection in the bus window showed someone who looked the same as before on the outside. Jeans, sneakers, hair still somewhere between messy and intentional. But inside, something had already begun to shift. This time, when I reached the classroom door, I didn't hesitate. I pushed it open and found teacher adjusting a tall silver stand draped with fabric. Today they wore a vinyl ensemble the color of storm clouds, soft gray, nearly metallic, making each movement catch the light. "You're early," they observed. Their tone wasn't surprised. If anything, it sounded expectant. "I didn't want to waste time," I replied. "Good. Commitment is essential. Today will be more challenging." Something in their voice made a pulse of anticipation spark in my chest. I stepped closer, noticing that the fabric on the stand was actually several garments layered together, each one slightly more intricate than the last. Teacher gestured to the mirror. "Show me how you stand today." I took my place and lifted my chin slightly. My shoulders eased back, weight balanced. This time I didn't fold into myself. Teacher nodded. "Already your posture speaks differently, you see." I did. My reflection, though still familiar, looked more composed, like I'd gained a second spine overnight. "Now we explore presence," teacher continued. They removed a garment from the stand, a vinyl vest in glowing pearl white, clean lines along its seams. "Put this on." I did, fastening each clasp carefully. The vest wrapped around me with a firmer structure than the tunic I'd worn yesterday. It wasn't constricting, just guiding. "Presence begins with form," teacher said. "It tells the world how you wish to be seen." Their words lingered as they added a flowing vinyl skirt, midnight blue, light enough to move easily. I hesitated, feeling the unfamiliar drape around my legs. My breath caught, not in panic, but in awe at how strange yet natural it felt. Teacher stepped back. "Walk." I did. The skirt whispered along the floor, its sound rhythmic. I felt graceful, something new, something startling. My steps became light, confident. Teacher instructed me to practice turning, pausing, and holding eye contact with my own reflection. Each time, I felt less like I was pretending and more like I was unveiling a truth. "You adapt quickly," teacher murmured. It wasn't flattery. It was observation, like they were taking notes written in the way I moved. Then came the challenge. Teacher placed a small stool in the center of the room and asked me to sit with composure, not rigid, not careless, but deliberate. Simple, I thought, But it was. I shifted awkwardly at first, unsure where my hands should rest or how to sit without feeling clumsy. Teacher watched patiently. "Try again," they said. "Let the garment guide you." I closed my eyes and inhaled. The vinyl skirt flowed around my legs, encouraging me to sit with careful placement rather than collapse. I rested my hands gently along my lap, fingers naturally shaping a curve. When I reopened my eyes, the mirror showed someone calm, elegant, and most surprising, comfortable. A warmth pooled in my chest. "You learn by feeling." Teacher observed, "Not by forcing." I nodded, but words felt insufficient. Then teacher placed something small into my hands. A vinyl choker, soft lavender with a tiny silver clasp. "This," they said, "symbolizes attention. It guides focus, not from others but from yourself. If you choose to wear it, you do so knowing you are ready to deepen." I hesitated. The choker was simple but carried weight beyond its size. "Do not rush," teacher said. "The choice is yours. Obedience means nothing without willingness." I rolled the choker between my fingers. Its texture was smooth, cool, grounding. Slowly, I lifted it around my neck and secured the clasp. Teacher watched with an unreadable expression, though their eyes glimmered with something like quiet pride. Then we proceed. A new exercise began, this time involving speech. Teacher asked me to introduce myself not as I had before, but as this new presence I was beginning to understand. I stood before the mirror, heart pounding more intensely than when I'd first worn the vinyl jacket. The room felt charged, as though my next words would carve a path I couldn't step back from. "My name is..." I paused, my voice caught, not out of confusion but from realization. The name I'd always used suddenly felt small, not wrong but incomplete. Teacher waited patiently. "My name is still what I've always said," I continued slowly, "but I think I'm learning what it means again." Teacher didn't correct me. They nodded. "Identity unfolds in layers. You need not rush to claim it. Allow it to arrive." The tension in my chest eased. We practiced vocal tone next, speaking with calm intention rather than hiding behind rushed words. Teacher taught me how to breathe before speaking, how to let silence support rather than suffocate. It was harder than any gesture training, but with each attempt, my voice sounded clearer, steadier. When we finished, teacher asked, "How do you feel?" I searched for an answer. "Different," I said. "Not finished, but different." Teacher's lips curved into a subtle smile. "Good. Discovery is a journey without a final form." As I changed back into my regular clothes at the end of the session, the vinyl garments folded neatly into their box. I felt reluctant to remove them, as though they carried a thread connecting me to something real, something fragile and new. Teacher handed me another page to add to my booklet, a blank sheet this time, marked only with the word "observe." "Today, take note not only of your emotions, but of your reactions to others," teacher said. "Notice when you shrink and when you expand." I left the classroom with the lavender choker still clasped gently around my neck. It was subtle enough to hide beneath my shirt, yet I felt its presence with every breath, a reminder of the choice I'd made. On the way home, I watched the world with new eyes. Every stranger, every reflection in a window felt like a quiet challenge. Could I meet their gaze? Could I stand present? By evening, I found myself writing again, pages filled not with answers, but with questions I never thought I'd allow myself to ask. And though uncertainty still lingered, it no longer felt frightening. It felt alive. I barely slept that night. The lavender choker rested on my bedside table, gleaming faintly in the lamplight like a quiet invitation. Each time I closed my eyes, flashes of my reflection from the classroom surfaced. The posture, the confidence, the quiet calm I never realized I could carry. By morning, I could feel something stirring, both excitement and apprehension. This journey was no longer just about clothing. It was becoming a conversation with a part of myself I'd ignored for years. When I returned to the classroom, the room felt different. Or maybe I was different. Teacher stood near the center, arranging a wide circle of reflective tiles on the floor. Their vinyl attire today was a deep burgundy, matte rather than glossy, giving them an authoritative yet gentle presence. "You kept the choker," teacher observed, eyes flicking to my neck where I'd refastened it before leaving home. I nodded, feeling oddly proud. "It reminded me to be present," I said. Teacher's eyes softened. "Good, today we deepen that presence." They gestured to the circle of tiles. Each one reflected fragments of the room: walls, light, floor, my own legs shifting nervously. "These mirrors," teacher explained, "show partial truths. They force you to assemble what you cannot fully see. Step inside." I moved carefully into the circle. My reflections scattered across the broken pieces, each tile showing a different angle. A shoulder here, a hand there, fragments of my face blurred and multiplied. "At first," teacher said, "identity often feels like this, a collage of glimpses. We are taught to choose one piece and pretend it is the whole. But you will learn to see the entire picture." They handed me a simple vinyl sash, pale silver. "Wear this." I draped it across myself. It felt weightless, like a promise more than a garment. "Look down," teacher instructed. I did. The fragments reflected the sash, each piece catching a different angle, soft curves, clean lines, subtle shimmer. "What do you see?" "I see pieces of me," I said slowly. "But none of them feel wrong, just incomplete." Teacher nodded. "Exactly." They stepped beside the circle. "Now move, slowly." I took a cautious step. The fragments shifted with me, blending and separating as the light shifted across the vinyl. My figure in one tile overlapped with another, my reflection building and dissolving with every movement. "Identity is an evolving form," teacher said. "You must allow yourself to change without needing immediate clarity." I found a rhythm, careful steps, gentle turns. The sash whispered like distant rain. I felt less aware of the scattered reflections and more aware of how I moved within them, how each step felt guided by intention rather than fear. Teacher watched with quiet intensity. "Good, now kneel." The command startled me, not in a way that frightened, but in a way that made me hyper-aware of my body. I sank slowly to the floor, letting the vinyl glide. My reflections splintered closer, the pieces returning my image in broken curves. "Place your hand over your heart," teacher said. I did. "What do you feel?" I inhaled, surprised by the steadiness in my chest. "I feel here, grounded." Teacher's voice lowered, resonant. "Obedience is not submission. It is trust. Trust in a process, trust in yourself." I closed my eyes. For a moment, the room felt still, as though the mirrors held their breath with me. "Rise," teacher said. I stood, the sash slipping slightly along my shoulder. Teacher removed a small, vinyl-bound journal from a drawer, purple, with thin white lines running across its cover like branches. "This is your mirror journal," they said. "Each reflection you see, literal or emotional, belongs here. Draw what you cannot describe. Write what you cannot speak." I accepted it, feeling the smooth cover under my palm. The next lesson shifted from physical movement to emotional reveal. Teacher asked me to speak about the first time I felt out of place in my own clothing, the first moment I wondered if the inside of me differed from what others expected to see. My throat tightened. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready. But teacher waited patiently, silence forming a safe space between us. I began slowly, recalling small memories, trying on fabrics that were meant for me, feeling more at peace in thrifted blouses than in stiff shirts. The confusion when people laughed, not cruelly but dismissively, when I experimented. "It felt like no one understood why I cared," I said. "Like it was just a phase or something to hide." Teacher listened without interruption. When I finished, they placed a hand over their own heart, a gesture I recognized from our earlier practice. "You felt unseen. That is a heavy weight." I nodded, surprised by the heat in my chest. "But you are seen now," teacher continued. "Not because of what you wear, but because you are learning to look at yourself." A knot in my throat loosened. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, not sadness, but recognition. Teacher gestured to the wardrobe. Choose your own outfit today. The request startled me. Until now, teacher had chosen every garment. My hands trembled as I approached the wardrobe. So many options, colors, textures, shapes. I reached out instinctively for a vinyl blouse in deep indigo and paired it with slim silver trousers. When I put them on, they felt right. Not because they transformed me, but because they echoed something inside. Teacher nodded in approval. Your instincts are sharpening. We spent the remaining time refining gestures, posture, tone, each movement slower, more thoughtful. I learned to look into the mirror without flinching, to embrace the shape reflected there without apology. When the session ended, teacher placed a final task before me. For tomorrow, they said, bring something from your past, an object that carries a story. We will weave it into your transformation. The request unsettled me, not because I didn't have such an object, but because I knew exactly which one I'd bring. As I left the classroom, the mirror journal pressed against my side, I felt the shape of tomorrow already forming. It scared me, but it also thrilled me. The object I chose felt heavier than it should have. It was only a scarf, soft cotton, faded along the edges, but it held years of memories I rarely spoke about. I found it buried in a drawer that I almost never opened, wrapped tightly as though trying to keep its story contained. On my way to the classroom, the scarf remained tucked inside my bag, but I felt its presence like a quiet pulse. I wondered what teacher would ask of me, how this simple piece of fabric might become part of my unfolding identity. When I entered, the room was darker than usual. The overhead lights were dimmed, replaced by warm lamps placed along the walls. Teacher stood at the center, wearing a vinyl garment so dark it looked like wet ink. As I drew closer, I noticed intricate stitching along its surface, tracing delicate lines like rivers branching across a map. Teacher greeted me with a gentle nod and motioned toward a low platform. You have brought the object. I nodded and drew the scarf from my bag. The lamps cast soft patterns across its folds, making its faded color look strangely alive. Tell me about it, teacher said. I hesitated. The scarf carried a memory I almost wished I could forget, yet holding it now, in this room, I felt safer than I expected. It belonged to my grandmother, I said. She gave it to me when I was very young. I used to wear it when no one was around. I liked how it felt light, soft, comfortable. It made me feel different, not someone else, just more like myself. Teacher listened with closed eyes, as though absorbing every word. One day, I continued, someone found me wearing it. I don't even remember what they said, just how I felt afterwards, ashamed, wrong. I hid it away. Silence flowed through the room like calm water. Teacher opened their eyes. Objects often carry our first truths, they said. They reveal pieces of us we haven't yet learned to honor. They guided me to place the scarf on the platform. Today, we blend past and present. From the wardrobe, teacher drew out a vinyl coat the color of twilight. It shimmered as though holding the reflection of stars. They draped it over my shoulders, careful and deliberate. The weight surprised me, not heavy but grounding, like a firm embrace. Now take your scarf, teacher instructed. I lifted the faded fabric with slow hands. It felt fragile, delicate compared to the vinyl's polished surface. Wrap it however feels right, teacher said. I hesitated only a moment before looping it gently around my neck beneath the coat. The contrast of textures, soft cotton against sleek vinyl, felt symbolic, like a bridge between what I had been and what I was becoming. Teacher smiled, not broadly, but with a warmth that reached their eyes. This is integration, they said, honoring what shaped you rather than hiding it. They directed me to stand before the mirror. The sight startled me, not because I looked unrecognizable, but because I looked complete. The scarf no longer felt like a secret. It felt like truth. Describe what you see, teacher said. I see, I paused, searching. Someone who remembers, someone who isn't ashamed anymore. Teacher nodded. Good, that is where strength begins. They then guided me through a new set of exercises, ones that felt more introspective than physical. First, I stood in silence, holding eye contact with my reflection. Minutes felt like hours, but gradually the discomfort faded. The person looking back no longer felt like a stranger. Next, teacher asked me to speak aloud, not to the room, but to the reflection, to tell them what I wished someone had told me the day I hid the scarf away. My voice trembled at first. "You don't have to be afraid," I said quietly. "You're allowed to be yourself. There's nothing wrong with you." The words settled deep inside. I felt something soften, anger I never knew I still carried, melting into relief. Teacher approached, placing a hand gently against my shoulder. "Acceptance is the foundation of transformation," they said. "Without it, identity becomes a cage. With it, identity becomes a path." We practiced movements again, this time slow and reflective, turning, breathing, letting the coat and scarf guide my shape. Every gesture felt like a conversation with my past, acknowledging the hurt but also the resilience that brought me here. At one point, teacher instructed me to remove the coat and wear only the scarf. The vinyl garment slipped away, revealing a simpler version of myself. "How do you feel now?" they asked. "Exposed but okay," I replied. "Clothing is a tool," teacher said, "but true transformation begins beneath the fabric." I nodded, surprised by how comforting the simplicity felt. I would not have believed it earlier, but now the faded scarf felt as meaningful as any structured garment teacher had chosen for me. We closed the lesson by returning the coat to my shoulders, symbolically merging the old with the new. Before I left, teacher handed me a new page for my journal. This one held 2 words, "Honor beginnings." "This page," teacher said, "is for your grandmother. Write to her or about her. Thank her, forgive her, remember her, whatever feels true." I pressed the scarf to my chest, feeling the echo of old stories settle quietly inside me. As I left the classroom, the late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, catching on the vinyl coat and making it glisten as I walked. The world beyond the door felt quieter, not because anything had changed outside, but because something had changed within. For the first time in a long while, I felt connected, to memory, to identity, to possibility. I stood outside the classroom door a long while before entering. I could feel that the end of this journey was drawing near, though I didn't know what end meant anymore. Transformation was no longer a distant dream or a frightening concept. It had become part of the rhythm of my days, quiet, steady, unfolding. When I finally stepped inside, I found the room arranged differently than ever before. The desks were gone, leaving an open floor. Soft lights glowed along the walls, and in the center stood a tall mirror framed in gentle silver. Teacher waited beside it, wearing the same twilight-colored vinyl coat I had worn in the previous lesson. "You've come far," they said. I didn't know how to respond, so I nodded. Teacher gestured to the mirror. "Today is your final exercise." My hands tightened slightly around my mirrored journal. Within it lay pages of questions, sketches, prayers, scattered thoughts. It felt fuller than it should, as though it contained more than just paper, like it held all the layers I'd found within myself. "Stand before the mirror," teacher instructed. I did. The reflection staring back no longer felt unfamiliar. The lavender choker rested at my neck, the twilight coat draped across my shoulders, and the faded scarf wound gently beneath. I looked neither like the person I thought I was nor someone completely new. I looked whole. Teacher's voice softened. "Do you see the fragments?" I nodded. I did. But this time they were not broken. They were connected, forming a shape I recognized. "When you arrived," teacher continued, "you saw uncertainty, fear, hesitation. Today you see presence." I inhaled slowly, aware of the weight of their words. "This lesson has never been about becoming someone else," teacher said. "It has been about uncovering who you are beneath expectation, beneath silence." They stepped beside me, meeting my gaze in the mirror. "The world will not always understand," they said, "but that is not your burden. You have learned to stand, to move, to speak, to remember. Most importantly, you have learned to honor yourself." My chest tightened, though not with fear. Teacher turned to a small table where a single vinyl-bound box rested. They lifted the lid and revealed a garment unlike any I had worn before, a coat of deep indigo, lined with soft silver stitching. It shimmered subtly, reflecting both light and shadow. "This is your final piece," Teacher said, "not because it completes you, but because you choose it." They offered it to me with both hands. A quiet tremor ran through my fingers as I removed the twilight coat and slipped into the indigo one. The fabric felt like a connection between every step I had taken. The first jacket I had worn, the tunic, the skirt, the gloves. All those memories seemed to settle into the seams of this garment. It held them, not as weight, but as foundation. Teacher stepped back, studying me, and for the first time, the expression on their face was not one of instruction, but acknowledgement. "You are ready." I swallowed. Ready for what? Teacher nodded toward the mirror. "Ready to choose your path." They asked me to speak, to address my reflection as the person I was now. I took a breath, steady and full. "I choose to be honest," I began. "With myself, with others. I choose to respect who I've been and who I'm becoming. I may not have all the answers, but I'm not afraid of the questions anymore." The words flowed without force. They felt natural, like air. Teacher listened, then placed a hand on the mirror frame. "In this class, you learned structure so you could express freely. You followed guidance so you could later guide yourself." They motioned toward the center of the room where, until now, I hadn't noticed a second mirror leaning quietly against the wall. "You will take that one," Teacher said. "It is yours, not to judge yourself, but to remember who you are every day you choose to show up." The mirror was smaller than the first, trimmed in the same silver that lined my new coat. I lifted it gently, feeling its weight, a steady reminder rather than a burden. Teacher then removed from their pocket a small card and handed it to me. It bore only a single sentence. "Be present always." "This is your last instruction," they said. I looked around the room, suddenly aware of how different it seemed. Brighter even in its dim light. Spacious, familiar. Teacher bowed their head slightly, a gesture of respect. "You sought obedience," they said, "but learned autonomy. You sought guidance but found your inner voice. Do you see?" I nodded. "I see." Teacher stepped closer, their voice low and steady. "Whatever path you choose, know that truth is never static. It moves as you move. You are allowed to change, allowed to explore, allowed to grow." They placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "And when doubt returns, which it will, remember your first lessons. Stand tall. Breathe and trust your form." My breath shook, more from emotion than uncertainty. "Thank you," I murmured. Teacher inclined their head, accepting the words without modesty or pride, simply as truth. When I turned to leave, my reflection caught in the smaller mirror. I looked composed, confident, and more than anything, authentic. As I stepped through the doorway, Teacher called gently after me. "The world awaits you, not as you were, but as you choose to be." Outside, afternoon sunlight spread across the pavement, catching on the indigo coat. The scarf fluttered at my neck, soft and familiar. Each step felt lighter than the last. I passed by windows and caught glimpses of myself, not as scattered fragments, but as a living whole. The journey didn't feel over. It felt like it was just beginning. I walked on, holding the mirror at my side, the card tucked safely into my journal, the words echoing softly with every breath. "Be present always." And for the first time in my life, I finally understood what that meant. The world waited, not for a version of me that fit expectation, but for the person I had learned to see within the mirror's shifting truth. And with steady steps, I chose to meet it.